Hi, welcome for this edition of the BCTV Roundtable, where we're discussing ACWC's Nourishing the Inner Artist series, conversations about art, creativity, and the imagination. So just to give you a little background, this is a series that was launched by the Arts Council of Windham County, and it was launched just on March 22nd. And it is a series that was co-created between artist and educator Sarah Bowen and myself. And we built it off of the Healing with Arts last year's series. And we started thinking more about what we were really trying to do, how we were really trying to get at the whole topic of how do we nourish ourselves and how does the work that we create in the world nourish others. So I would like to welcome you to join me with my guests. We have Petria Michell of the Michell Giddings Fine Arts. We have William Forchion, performing artist and arts ambassador. And we have John Potter, executive director of Latchis Arts and Latchis Corporation. Welcome, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time. And why don't you each just introduce yourselves and just give the audience a little bit of sense of who you are?
You want me to start?
Sure, if you'd like.
Okay. Well, I'm Petria Michell, that's correct.
Yes.
Founder and co-director of Michell Giddings Fine Arts on Main Street in Brattleboro. And I'm a working artist and marketing my own work and about 28 other artists currently in the gallery. And we have artist talks and poetry readings and things like that that really enhance the gallery's creation. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm William Forchion, multi-hyphenate performing artist. I have worked, my work is in the theater mainly, but I do a little bit of everything. And I'm also a published author and poet.
Thank you.
So I'm John Potter. I'm the executive director of Latchis Arts and Latchis Corporation. I've been doing that for about 4 years. Before that, I was for a long time the arts and entertainment editor of The Reformer. And in both gigs, I've had the opportunity to be an observer of and a collaborator with many, many different local artists and organizations, and have enjoyed every minute of that.
Perfect. Thank you. So I do want to open up and start with a question of either how do you define what it means to nourish the inner creator or inner artist, or even if you don't think of yourself that way, if one doesn't think of themselves that way, what does that mean to nourish? I know. It's whoa, right?
I guess I can jump in.
Yeah.
I don't consider myself an artist, but one of the reasons I made the move to the Latchis was to give myself an opportunity to perhaps nourish the other artists that I had gotten to know so well during my time here. You know, we are a venue which works with many, many different collaborative artists and other organizations to produce the events and the happenings and the programming at the Latchis. So we are inherently collaborative and inherently vested in the success of many different artists' endeavors. So we become cheerleaders and partners for all kinds of different artists, and am very cognizant of trying to figure out how we can nourish the artists that come into our building. Whether it's as simple as creating a professional and smooth running event with the artists so they don't have to worry about that and they can concentrate on their art, to being a good partner that helps other artists create fundraising events so we can nourish them financially, and hopefully in doing so nourish them creatively and just in their standing and outreach to other people in the community. So that's certainly a role to play. I would like to add another spin on the word nourish. Although I'm not a working artist, I do enjoy singing and other creative endeavors, and those things nourish me. So when we talk about nourishing artists, I think it's important to think of that word nourish as being a kind of circular word, and that feeds me, and maybe in some ways helps me then nourish the artists I work with. So those are my thoughts right off the bat.
Thank you.
There are many things that come to mind of nourishing the artist, and I am reminded of hearing many artists say that they do their art because they couldn't imagine not doing it, that there is such a need, and there's a feed that has to happen in the soul for that. And I also look at that nourishing, and I think of breakfast, lunch, dinner, and dessert, and that there are there's different parts to that whole arts experience as an artist, the creation of it, the concept, coming with the concept, and then figuring out how to create and what form that's going to be created in. And each of those things, it feeds a little bit more of who I am and helps me to be alive. And there's also then the presentation of when I'd figure out what medium that's going to be in, how am I going to get this to a place where I can pass this on and share this that feeds me with others who may not be creative, or who may be creative, and it may inspire them to create in a different way. And then, of course, there's the dessert, getting paid for what you do. So the breakfast, lunch, dinner, and dessert, and all those are important because, in some senses, like some of the work that I do can't be done unless there's a payback for it, the financial end. And there's some of it, some of the writing is easy to do. I could write for days as long as I have a pen and a piece of paper, and sometimes a little blood and a piece of paper. And the outlet of getting it out to the audience, whether it's submitting through electronically or sending something through the mail, all those things feed. And there's no telling how it's going to nourish. And sometimes the feeding of others, by whether it's the performance or the doing of it, does take a little away from. So sometimes I feed others and not feed myself through my work. And so there's a lot of nuance to that whole feeding the art, feeding the artist.
Thank you.
Oh boy, the nourishing part, there's so many different layers. Creating the gallery really was probably the most creative thing that I've ever done personally, and still is, along with painting and poetry. But creating a space where artists have an opportunity to show their work is really, really important. Of course, we have the Brattleboro Museum too, but a retail fine arts gallery, the kind that we created, it's beautifully presented, it's very thoughtful. You can have an artist statement and have your artist talk, so you can interact with the audience. So artists really, really need a venue for presenting their work and being able to talk about their work, commune with potential buyers and with other artists. And that we're a pretty vital place in this community because some people have called it an oasis, kind of like a shrine where they can come in and be either quiet and just contemplate the work around them. So that's been a real honor to create in our town and offer that to our artists.
Great, thank you. And just in case you're just tuning in, you're here with myself and all my guests. I'm Shanta Lee Gander talking to you about the ACWC series, Nourishing the Inner Artist. And some of you are talking about, even if one may not consider themselves an artist, but they are providing and creating space, maybe it comes to contributing an idea that then forms into something that actually takes place, but also the balance between feeding of oneself. So then that loop, whether it's through compensation or whether it's through feedback you get from the audience, or even in providing the space, the joy or nourishment you may get, and like seeing work that happens in the space you create for other artists. Now, all of us may be familiar with some of the talk around creative economy that's been happening for years in this area. And there's one quote, I believe it's by Vermont's creative sector, has about 32% above national average, according to the Vermont Creative Sector Economy Future Works report of 2016, which I know was a couple of years ago. But despite this data, we all know that Vermont faces an aging population. It's hard to keep young people here, and that loop of continuing the great work that some of us have started. So do you think the creativity forums or any of some of the things that you've experienced in the area fit into this concept of creative economy? And if not, how might things, or how might we be thinking about creative economy here?
I think the forums offer a wonderful format for people to be involved in creativity, whether it's experiencing and really enjoying what they're hearing or seeing or touching, but also to engage with them. They can engage personally with it. So that enhances the quality of their lives and therefore enhances the quality of all of our lives. I think that it's a wonderful service to be able to go to a forum and hear how people are feeling or not feeling, or being part of the human economy that helps the creative economy thrive.
Now, William, you just moderated the first kickoff. And so from that perspective, maybe you might have some insights on.
Well, it's funny because you were mentioning about an aging population and I've yet to live in a community where that hasn't been the term. Where there's an aging population, the youth are going away, or the young folks are going away. And I think that that's constantly a cycle that we're going to always be in. And I have appointed myself as an ambassador to the arts.
Wait, so you made that term yourself?
No, actually, I am an ambassador for the arts. I've taken 2 trips to Turkmenistan, where I've been a cultural exchange ambassador for the U.S. State Department. I made that up for myself when I was a young clown, because I wanted to bridge that gap of what was scary and what was not in that art form, and find a way to make it open and accessible. And I had many roadblocks along the way. Growing up, I'd never seen a brown clown before. And through my 30 years of clowning, I have met many people who look at me and go, I didn't know that clowns could be brown. Which is, to me, I just go, well, we have Key and Peele. Both of them are clowns. We have Amos and Andy way back when, who were television clowns. And they may not have worn the makeup, but it was a form of clowning. And to be able to both look at the history and look at the present and look at the past as an ambassador, and that was for clowning, but also it's for any of the arts, and open that door for people. I don't think that we'll have to worry about aging or running away youth population, because it will be cyclical. We will have an aging population that may have been a scientist or in some other field who finds that they wake up the artist in them and takes that and turns it into something else. So that aging population may actually be the new growth in the arts, or that youth population may inspire. We don't know where the inspiration will come from. And as an ambassador, I lay out a bunch of keys, and I hope that people will start picking up and opening doors to find their way to express through art, or turn their work or their career, their skill into the art form. There are many engineers and architects, there are many doctors who are artists in their own form. And they may see themselves as scientists, and that science can be an art form.
I would agree with Bill. I certainly define creative very broadly, and when we look at craft food producers and many other entrepreneurs and innovators, I see them linked very closely to artists and what artists do. I define it broadly, and I think the creative sector defined broadly is very strong in our community, in our state. I think anytime and as often as we can step back and look at the whole, look at how much creativity there is, look up from our own individual work and appreciate how much of it is in our town and the impact that it has on our town, the better it is, and it gives you a sense of a collective force that might not be there if you are just focused on going from one thing to the next. But if you look just recently at the new BMC and the new facility at NECA, and Michell Giddings opening up, and there are other organizations with very ambitious plans. I think we see this incredible collective energy and investment. People are, for lack of a better term, betting on their lives here in Brattleboro, and that benefits the whole community. It's funny, I grew up in New York City and never once went to the Statue of Liberty or the Empire State Building, but I was always glad that they were in my hometown, and I feel the same way about many of the artists and arts organizations, that I don't get to see everything I want to see, but I'm awfully glad that they're part of my town and part of the town's portfolio. To be able to hold up everything that we have is very important. And when you see that in a holistic, collective way, it really demonstrates the power and kind of the impressive vitality of it. And so as much as possible, we can look up and look around, and also connect meaningfully and intentionally with other artists and other organizations. I think it serves everybody well. I think I've always thought it'd be great to create some mechanism to herald the great visionary founders of arts organizations. I sort of have envisioned this Mount Rushmore of founders where Blanche Moise and Attila Zoller and on and on and on can all be together, so we can appreciate incredible people who have come along and started something that has fed our community. And it's not just individuals, it's organizations. But I think the more we can appreciate everything that's there in its entirety, even the stuff that you don't go to by choice or by inclination, it's important to the work that we all do here.
Thank you. Now, what would you say to someone who would say, well, it's a privilege or luxury to create or be thinking about my inner artist, or I'm not a creative, or I have no time? What would you, because as we've designed the forums, and we got a lot of great feedback from a lot of the arts organizations and a lot of individuals, they gave some really great feedback for shaping this. We're trying to reach everybody, the person who says, well, I'm not an artist, but I just want to go see what this is about, all the way to artists working in different mediums and getting them all in the same room. What would you say to those people who just feel like they don't see themselves in sort of like being an artist or creative as an elite title?
If I can take that one. My first response is, do not mistake composure for ease. That which I do, whether it's the clowning or moderating, writing, it takes skill. It takes practice. Starting out as a writer, I was not fluent. I struggled, just like a kindergartner working on letters. And I practiced, and for a year, I had to give myself time, an hour a day to write, and at which point I had to write. Didn't matter what I wrote. And out of that came a fluidity at which I could produce words on paper that somehow stitched together. The same as my performance as a physical artist. I have to work on my body all the time. This is my job. And when I do it well, the reward is that someone hires me as a performing artist or as a stunt person. And it doesn't mean that it's not a pleasure to do in the end. It is. The work is staying prepared, learning the skills. I don't find that there's a luxury at all in that. I do find there's a great deal of luxury in the reward, and that reward is not necessarily the payday. It's actually the doing the work. When I would show up on a movie set, or Sony, the Sony lot in Hollywood, and just be beaming, smiling, because I was on the lot. This kid from New Jersey who used to watch television and go, oh, I want to be that stuntman or that actor, and there I was on the lot going, everybody, look at me, I'm here. That was my reward. And then there was a second reward, is that a paycheck came in the mail from Sony or Warner Brothers or Paramount. And that's fine, but the work happened long before. I had spent 20 years of training before I got that first job. So is that a luxury? I don't think so. There wasn't a big reward in all that training that went into that 20 years. There was waiting tables. There was janitor at the Beacon Theater. There were a lot of other things that happened before I got there. And what I have to do as a professional, as doing this for a living, is have composure. Be able to compose myself to do the job that I've been asked to do or hired to do and do it well. Otherwise, you don't work anymore.
I think helping people understand that they all have an ability to create if they are interested. And spending time going to open houses. I'm hoping that we can do open houses more for people to just walk in and just see and be invited to come in and see when there's artists there. But I'm with Bill. It's a skill that one really needs to spiritually be involved with, and just showing up, being disciplined, showing up, but hanging out with people that you respect in perhaps some particular art form that you might be intrigued by. So that can sometimes be kind of difficult to find a way to get in the door and to feel comfortable, but everybody is an artist to some degree. Yeah, so.
I think, concepts of artists being separate, perhaps even elitism, they've been present in the conversation about art for centuries, a long time. I think we're fortunate in our community, in our area, that while those questions may still occur, it's a lot less in our community. I don't know of any artists, I can't think of any who sort of deliberately alienate people, and I think we're fortunate not to feel elitism the way it can be felt in other areas. So we are fortunate. I think there are a great many artists who are striving to put into their practice and their work ways of breaking down barriers, whether it's the barrier of price or the barrier of not understanding what's going on, or the barrier of people thinking they can't do it. I know that most of the artists I run into are focused in some way on being more inclusive and more embracing of everyone, rather than less, or rather than just content with the walls and barriers that are up. To a certain extent, you can take care of only what you can take care of, and then it's up to other people to join you. But I think around here, the focus and the direction is on inclusivity and embrace and welcoming into the tent, as opposed to drawing the doors on the tent. So I think we're luckier here than most. I also think there's we always should be thinking about making the case for art. I think that's a fair thing to do, but there is ample evidence that art and creativity is not the add-on luxury, but that it's essential to people's soul. I remember reading that shortly after 9/11, sales of books of poetry spiked. People reached for something that fed them in that way. And when the economy suffered a downturn, many people's reaction was to say, you know what, I'm going to strike out and do my own thing. If the economy is not taking care of me, if my large corporation is not taking care of me, I'm going to open that restaurant I always wanted to open, which is a creative act. I'm going to do that. And I think the clues are there in that response of people, that when they are placed into that fight or flight mode, they very often put their response in a form of creativity. And I think that speaks to how essential it is to humanity. And so the more we can find examples of that and discuss that and just carry ourselves through our day with that in mind, that what we're doing is essential, I think that helps.
Wow. I can't follow that up. That was that was so well stated, and almost in a way to say to create is to be human, right? As we close up in our final few minutes, is there anything you'd like to add as we close our conversation?
No, yes. Yes. It's about the creative process that we were not born out of this magic egg that said, this Bill Forchion is going to be a performer. A society created me. I was exposed to certain things. Growing up listening to classical music live, listening to chamber music, being able to see Shakespeare in the Park and watching other things, that local circus that came to town, and being inspired to do that, not knowing that there's an outlet. Anyone can wind up being this artist. Every one of us knows how to write. Every one of us has words. We all have ideas. If you take those ideas and you write them down and you keep crafting that, you will wind up with the most amazing thing. And that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are, what your training is. Your training, we all have the same resources available to us. And whether you're a mechanic, a plumber, the guy who drives the wholesale grocery truck, it doesn't matter who you are. You have the ability to create, and you do. We do every day. There are people who go home and they make the most amazing meals from out of their head. That's the creative process. We come up with, sometimes it comes from an idea, sometimes it's an impulse that's from external, and we move on that. To me, that's the closest thing to godliness that there is. That is my church. That is my religion, if there is. That's my spirituality. And being able to tap into that and have an outlet that is writing, that is performing, that is speaking, that is even being able to absorb from the inspiration around me, that is the creative process. And it's available to everyone.
It is.
Thank you. Well, with that, if everybody's okay, I'm going to wrap up. That works. So thank you all for joining us, all of us, to have this conversation about nourishing the inner artist. Also, please don't miss the next creativity forum that's happening at 118 Elliott Street on Thursday, April 26th, starting at 6 p.m. I will be moderating, actually. And so you'll be joining myself along with best-selling author Suzanne Kingsbury, who has developed a model for pulling out that inner writer. Also, we will be joined by Claire Rainius, and she'll be talking about how she creates space within herself in order to perform. And you'll also be joined by Sarah Bowen, who's a visual artist, and she will be sharing some of her epiphanies that have been coming out of her work and her visual work that she's been creating for many years. And the topic is a room of one's own, the creation of inner space. So with that, thank you very much, and thank you all of you for taking the time to have this discussion. I do wish we had more time, but
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.